A voice cut through first class like an alarm. "Security, remove this girl right now. She does not belong in here. If you think you know how this ends, wait until the truth steps into the aisle." North Star Air Flight 329 hummed at the gate in Denver. The sky over the runway was the pale blue of a cold morning. In Seat 1C, a 17-year-old black girl lifted her eyes from a thick medical book. Ava Brooks met the glare of the flight attendant standing over her. "This section is for actual passengers, not handouts." The attendant's name tag read Carol Price. Her voice carried down the polished aisle. Heads turned. Phone cameras lifted. A man in 2A muttered that he had never seen anything like it. Ava did not flinch. She placed a ribbon to mark her page on cardiac emergencies. Her hands were steady. She reached into a leather folio and began to unfasten the clasp. If anyone expected a meltdown, they were about to be disappointed. Have you ever been judged so fast that no one stops to check who you are? Keep listening, because the next 60 seconds will set the tone for the entire flight. Carol folded her arms. "Learn your place. Show me your boarding pass again, sweetie. Systems get things wrong all the time. Coaches behind a curtain that way." Ava handed over the pass without a word. "First class. Seat 1C, Brooks A." The gold embossing shone under the cabin light. Carol stared at the card as if the letters might rearrange into a different truth. Probably a points error. Or a transfer someone pushed through. It happens when people try tricks. A woman across the aisle angled her phone. Live broadcast starting. Her name was Lena Cruz. Her screen showed a small flood of hearts rising. Comments began to tick upward. "Get her name. Record everything. Do not let them quietly move her." Ava's medical textbook lay open beside a pen neatly placed along the margin. A slender bracelet rested against her wrist. The engraving caught the light. "Dr. A. Brooks. Emergency contact listed. Summit Heart Institute. I need to place a call," Ava said in a calm voice. "No phones." "We are about to push back." "Airplane mode now," said Carol. She pressed her intercom. "First class here. Passenger situation. I need ground supervisor Alex Reed at the door." The captain's voice came over the speaker. "Cabin crew, departure clearance in 8 minutes. Prepare the cabin for pushback." 8 minutes. The countdown had started and the whole aisle could feel it. Ava unlocked her phone. She scrolled to a contact labeled Dr. Patel. "Emergency." She tapped once. Ended it. A text flashed on her screen. "Protocol active." "Standing by, miss, I just told you," said Carol. "It is doctor," said Ava, still soft. "This is a medical emergency notification system. Federal rules allow emergency communication during taxi for medical need." Was that precise law, or just confident air? It did not matter. Carol did not know. She huffed and faced the front as Alex Reed climbed aboard. Tall, crisp uniform, a look that said this would be fast. "What is going on?" asked Alex without glancing at Ava. "Passenger in first class claims her ticket is valid," Carol said, making a small shrug that did the work of a full accusation. Alex finally looked at Ava. She was reading a chapter on surgical protocols. She wore a bracelet most people never see unless they work in hospitals. Something was not adding up. But he had done this job for 15 years. Fake IDs, bought points. It happened. "Gather your things and move to your assigned seat," he said. "I am in my assigned seat," Ava replied. Offering the boarding pass again, Lena whispered into her phone. "Viewer count rising. 4 digits soon if this keeps up." Her chat lit up. "Record the name tags. Do not blink. This is how the truth gets erased." Ava's thumb hovered over another contact on her screen. "Board line." She took a breath. The kind you take before a first incision. The one they teach you to keep your hands still. "Sir," she said to Alex, "I am Dr. Ava Brooks. I am in the correct seat." "I am happy to provide more identification, doctor." "She is 17, Carol said with a dry laugh. "Children say anything these days." The cabin had gone quiet in that way a courtroom goes quiet when a verdict is close. The captain announced 4 minutes to push back. 4 minutes to decide which way this story would turn. "Just show me an ID that matches your ticket," said Alex. "We can end this right now." Ava opened the folio. She lifted a badge clipped to a blue lanyard. Summit Heart Institute. The photo matched. The title line read, "Chief Resident Cardiac Surgery." The kind of title most people do not see linked to a teenager. "That is not real," Carol said. "It cannot be." 3 minutes, said the captain. Ava looked down at the folio. One more card sat under the badge. A number etched beside a name in her contacts pulsed like a quiet alarm. Uncle Thomas, direct. You know the feeling when one call can decide whether a room gets smaller or bigger. That moment had arrived, and every phone on the aisle could sense it. Lena's live chat surged. Names scrolled fast. People asked the same question in a dozen different ways. Who is this girl? How is she so calm? What happens if she presses that number? Alex glanced at his own phone. He typed with quick hands. Search results filled the screen. Youngest chief resident at Summit Heart Institute. A photo stared back at him. The same steady eyes now sitting in seat 1C. A text buzzed on Ava's screen. Legal team ready. Document everything. 2 minutes until departure. Last chance to handle this with care, Ava said, still quiet. 2 minutes never felt so loud. Alex turned pale. His screen confirmed what every whisper in the cabin now suspected. The girl sitting in front of him wasn't just a passenger. She was a prodigy, the youngest cardiac surgery resident in the country. Before he could speak, the captain's voice broke through the intercom. 2 minutes to departure. Prepare for pushback. The countdown ticked in everyone's heads, but Ava wasn't moving. She met Alex's eyes calmly, then turned to Carol. Ma'am, I asked for respect, not privilege. There's still time to do the right thing. Carol's lips trembled between defiance and doubt. Before she could respond, a knock sounded from the doorway. 2 TSA officers stepped inside the cabin. Their badges caught the light. What seems to be the issue? One of them asked, scanning the tense faces. Carol spoke first. This passenger is using fake identification to sit in first class. She's pretending to be a doctor. The older officer, Lieutenant Ramos, studied Ava. She looked young, too young, but there was something about her posture, her clarity, that made him pause. He noticed the bracelet. He noticed the steady eyes. Miss, can you step into the aisle, please? Ava marked her page with quiet precision and stood. The gold on her bracelet gleamed. I'm Dr. Ava Brooks, she said, resident cardiac surgeon at Summit Heart Institute. I'm traveling on a valid first-class ticket, confirmation code F9R27K. The officer blinked. He had handled hundreds of disputes, but this felt different. Something in his gut told him that this time the accusation was heavier than it appeared. Lena whispered to her viewers, It's happening. Over 1,000 watching now. Ramos asked to see identification. Ava produced 3 items: her license, hospital badge, and boarding pass. Each detail matched, each seal genuine. His partner ran the medical license number through their handheld terminal. After a pause, the confirmation pinged. Valid. Active medical license issued to Ava Elaine Brooks, age 17. Residency in pediatric cardiac surgery, Summit Heart Institute. Carol stepped back. That's impossible. She's a child, the cabin murmured. Some passengers began clapping quietly. Others filmed in disbelief. Lieutenant Ramos spoke gently. Dr. Brooks, I apologize. Everything checks out, appears to, Carol snapped. You can fake anything these days. Ava turned to her slowly. Miss Price, would you like me to recite the licensing standards for surgical residents, or perhaps quote, the federal statute on discrimination in air travel? Her tone was not angry. It was calm in a way that made the whole cabin lean closer. Regulation 382.7, she said evenly, prohibits discrimination on the basis of race, color, age, or perceived status. Each violation carries a minimum fine of $55,000. The silence after that was longer than any pause the captain had announced. Carol's radio buzzed. Take the call, came a firm voice. Corporate needs to speak with you immediately. I can't take a call right now, she said, her voice shaking. Take it now, the voice insisted. Ramos exchanged a look with Alex. Both knew the situation had spun beyond procedure. Lena's livestream had crossed 2,000 viewers and was trending in real time. Ava looked down at her phone. The contact Uncle Thomas direct blinked faintly. She didn't want to make that call. But someone else already had. The captain's voice returned, confused. Ground control, please repeat. We had clearance, negative, flight 329. Corporate ground stop. Hold departure, the cabin gasped. No one moved. Even the hum of the air conditioning seemed to hold its breath. Why would corporate ground a plane? Alex whispered. 2 new figures appeared in the doorway. Headsets, tailored suits, sharp eyes. They were not TSA. They were corporate security. One of them stepped forward. Dr. Brooks, our apologies. We've been instructed to ensure your comfort and safety. Carol's face drained of color. Her voice dropped to a whisper. Who gave that order? Ava opened her folio, glanced once at the black business card inside, then at the officers. I'll answer that when my call is connected, she said quietly, and before anyone could stop her, she pressed Uncle Thomas. The line clicked once. Thomas Reynolds, she said into the phone. Authorization code Delta 7. The entire cabin froze. Every airline employee in the room knew that name. Thomas Reynolds, the chairman of North Star Air. The girl they had accused of fraud wasn't just a passenger. She was family. A hush swept across the aisle. No one dared breathe. Even Lena's commentary stopped. Hello, sweetheart, came the voice on speaker. Are you safe? Yes, Uncle Thomas. Just an unfortunate misunderstanding. A misunderstanding that has now grounded a flight, he said. Put me on speaker, please. She did. His voice filled the cabin like a verdict. This is Thomas Reynolds, chairman of North Star Air. To whom am I speaking? Alex straightened. Sir, this is Ground Supervisor Alex Reed. I assure you we're resolving the situation, and who else is present? Carol swallowed hard. Carol Price, first-class attendant, employee number 8312. Ms. Price, said the chairman's voice, slow and cold. Why is my niece being confronted on my aircraft? Sir, I believed she was in the wrong seat. She was not. She was sitting where her ticket placed her. Dr. Ava Brooks holds a lifetime first-class credential under our medical humanitarian program. She has flown with us since she was 12. Lena's chat exploded. Thousands of hearts, emojis, and disbelief poured across the screen. Thomas continued. Furthermore, Dr. Brooks has performed emergency procedures aboard our flights on 3 occasions, saving 2 passengers in cardiac arrest. Carol pressed a hand to her chest as if trying to keep her job from falling out of it. Uncle Thomas, Ava said softly, I'd prefer we focus on policy. Not me, of course, sweetheart. Then let's make this clear for everyone listening. North Star Air maintains zero tolerance for discrimination of any kind. Any breach triggers immediate review and retraining. Sir, Alex said quietly. That's understood. Thomas's tone hardened. Ms. Price, you are suspended effective immediately pending mandatory bias education. Carol's knees gave out. She dropped into the jump seat, shaking. Ava spoke before anyone else could. Uncle Thomas, please wait. Everyone turned to her. I don't want punishment. I want understanding. She looked at Carol. This isn't about destroying a career. It's about learning what prejudice looks like when it hides behind procedure. Carol's tears fell fast. Dr. Brooks, I'm sorry. I was wrong. Completely wrong. Apology accepted, Ava said simply. Growth matters more than pride. The viewers erupted in praise. The hashtag Flight 329 began to trend. Thomas's tone softened. Ava, would you like to continue this flight or transfer to the family jet? No, she said. I want to finish this flight like everyone else. But I think the passengers deserve something for what they witnessed. Consider it done, he said. $500 vouchers for every passenger aboard Flight 329. The cabin gasped. Someone clapped. Ava smiled faintly. Then let's make sure this never happens again. Thomas's voice steadied. Starting today, you will head our Dignity in Aviation initiative. You'll design the bias training program yourself. Yes, sir, she replied. Outside, dawn climbed higher over Denver. Inside, every heart on board beat louder. The engines were silent, but history had already taken off. The engines stayed quiet, but tension still rippled through every row. People were whispering now, half in disbelief, half in admiration. Phones buzzed. Notifications streamed in. The world outside that plane was already watching. Ava sat back in her seat, calm once again, her hands folded over her open textbook. It was strange how peace could return in a moment that had been full of chaos only minutes before. She had faced this kind of scrutiny before. In hospitals, on campus, in meetings where her voice was dismissed before she even spoke. But this one felt different. This time the world had seen it unfold in real time. Her phone vibrated. A message from Dr. Patel flashed across the screen. Legal team is online. Do you need intervention? Ava typed back, not yet. Let's handle this with humanity first. The cabin door opened once more. 2 new figures entered, one in a dark suit, the other carrying a tablet. Corporate operations managers. They stopped at the front row and nodded respectfully. Dr. Brooks, Chairman Reynolds, has asked us to stay on board until landing to ensure your comfort and to conduct an immediate internal assessment. Carol still sat in the jump seat, her face pale, eyes red. She had wiped away her makeup, leaving only the truth behind: fear, regret, and something new: shame. Lena turned her phone slightly. "Viewers, they just sent in corporate," she whispered, her voice shaking. "This is the fastest escalation I've ever seen." The comments rolled by faster than anyone could read. "She's incredible. This needs to be everywhere. They picked the wrong girl." Ava turned to Carol and said softly, "Ms. Price, I know this is overwhelming, but I need you to stay here for the next part. What happens next isn't about punishment, it's about correction. You'll understand why." The corporate manager stepped closer. "Dr. Brooks, Chairman Reynolds has ordered an official statement to be recorded on this flight. He's asked if you would like to say something for the record before we resume takeoff." The passengers went silent again. Every phone lifted instinctively. Ava stood slowly, her voice calm and steady. "You can record if you like," she said to the passengers.
"What I'm about to say isn't just for me." She looked around the cabin, meeting each face.
"Discrimination doesn't always announce itself with slurs or shouting. Sometimes it hides in politeness, in quick judgments, in the quiet assumption that someone doesn't belong where they've rightfully earned the right to be. Today wasn't about a seat in first class, it was about perception." Her voice never trembled. "I don't want anyone fired. I want every person on this plane, every employee watching this live stream, to realize how easy it is to look at someone and see only a story you've invented. Bias is a habit, and like all habits, it can be broken." The passengers broke into applause. Carol covered her mouth, crying openly now. The corporate manager spoke softly. "Dr. Brooks, thank you. The chairman has just instructed us to extend your dignity initiative immediately to all branches of North Star operations. That includes domestic and international divisions." Ava nodded. "It starts here. Let's make this flight the first lesson." The captain's voice came through the speakers again. "Ladies and gentlemen, we've been cleared to resume our flight. Please remain seated as we prepare for pushback." Engines whirred back to life, the low hum a strange comfort after so much tension. But even as the plane began to move, the story wasn't finished, it was only beginning. 3 hours later, as the plane descended into Chicago, Ava's phone rang again. "Caller ID, Maya Reynolds, CEO, North Star Air," she answered. "Good afternoon, Maya." "Good afternoon, Dr. Brooks," the voice said, smooth and professional. "I want to personally apologize for what occurred on Flight 329. I've already been briefed by my father and our legal team. But more importantly, I've reviewed the live footage." Ava remained quiet. Maya continued, "This isn't just about one employee's mistake. It's about systemic blind spots. I'd like to propose a partnership between North Star and the Brooks Foundation. We want to develop a cross-industry bias recognition and response program, starting immediately." Ava tilted her head. "You're talking about a complete cultural rework. Training, auditing, enforcement, all of it. Yes, and I want you to lead it. You'd have full authority over curriculum, implementation, and review." Ava exhaled slowly. "Then it has to be transparent. Independent oversight, measurable results, and public accountability. No hidden reports." Maya smiled faintly on the other end. "You're tougher than our last 3 consultants combined. Consider it approved." Lena looked over from the next seat. "You just changed aviation policy mid-flight, didn't you?" Ava gave a small, almost shy smile. "No, Lena. We just proved accountability can fly too." When the plane landed, the applause was immediate. Passengers stood, clapping for the girl who had turned a moment of prejudice into a movement for change. The pilot even left the cockpit to shake her hand. "Dr. Brooks," he said, his voice full of respect, "it's an honor to have you on board." She smiled, adjusting the strap of her bag. "It's an honor to be treated like I belong." As she stepped off the plane, reporters were already waiting by the terminal glass, cameras flashing. The story had spread faster than the flight itself. By the time she reached the exit gate, hashtags had already gone global. Flight 329, Ava Brooks, dignity in the skies. But Ava wasn't interested in fame. She was interested in progress. She walked past the cameras and into the terminal, her mind already turning toward the work ahead. Within 24 hours, headlines would carry her name across every major outlet. But within 6 months, those same headlines would carry something far more important: the beginning of a reform that would change how millions of travelers experience the skies. And Ava knew this was only the first flight of many. Ava didn't rest when she reached Chicago. The moment she left the terminal, her phone began to ring again. Reporters, lawyers, board members, even other airlines. But one call mattered most. It came from a blocked number that only a handful of people in the country had access to. "Dr. Brooks," said a measured, clear voice. "This is Senator Elaine Carter. I just watched the footage from Flight 329. What happened on that plane should never happen to anyone. I'd like to discuss national reform, an aviation dignity bill." Ava stopped walking. Travelers brushed past her, rushing for ride-shares and baggage claims, but she stood still, holding the phone tight. "Senator, if we're talking about real reform, then we start with awareness. You can't legislate decency, but you can teach it." "That's exactly why I'm calling," said the senator. "We want you to testify before the Transportation Committee. The country needs to hear your story." "I'll testify," Ava said softly. "But I don't want the story to be about me. I want it to be about what happens to everyone who doesn't have the power to call a chairman." When she hung up, she finally exhaled. The hum of the terminal faded behind her. She looked up through the glass ceiling. Planes cut across the sky like silver arrows. The irony wasn't lost on her. The flight that had been grounded by bias would now help lift an entire system toward fairness. Later that night, in her apartment overlooking the city skyline, she sat at her desk surrounded by papers. The apartment was simple: a single bookshelf, 2 framed diplomas, and the faint smell of jasmine tea. She began outlining what would become known as the Dignity Initiative. At the top of the page, she wrote 3 words: respect, recognition, reform. The next morning, North Star Air issued a statement signed by both the chairman and the CEO. It began trending within minutes. "We are launching a global initiative led by Dr. Ava Brooks to eliminate bias and ensure dignity in all customer interactions." News outlets exploded with coverage. Talk shows debated the implications. Pilots, attendants, and travelers shared their own stories. But behind the viral moment, Ava kept working quietly. She spent hours meeting with psychologists, diversity experts, and data scientists to design the program. Every detail mattered: language and training manuals, the tone of internal memos, the algorithm that would detect passenger reports in real time. She refused to let it become another public relations stunt. Meanwhile, the world watched Carol Price's fate unfold. Cameras followed her as she entered North Star's training facility in Dallas. Eyes down but shoulders squared. Reporters expected bitterness, but they found something different. She faced the cameras and said, "I'm here to learn. What I did was wrong. What I feel now is accountability." Those words went viral too. Ava received a text from Carol that night. "Thank you for giving me a second chance," Ava typed back. "Growth isn't punishment. It's proof we can change." By the end of the first month, the initiative had expanded beyond North Star. 3 other airlines signed agreements to adopt the program. The FAA requested a demonstration of the reporting app Ava had helped design. The app was simple. Users could report incidents instantly, include photos or witness names, and send them directly to an independent review board. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start. And sometimes that's all a revolution needs. 6 weeks later, Ava stood in Washington, D.C. under the dome of the Capitol. The air was thick with expectation. Dozens of cameras faced her. Senators shuffled papers, waiting to hear from the young doctor who had turned a humiliating moment into a movement. When she spoke, her voice carried the same calm that had once silenced a cabin full of strangers. "Bias," she said, "doesn't always wear a hateful face. Sometimes it wears a uniform, sometimes it holds authority, and sometimes it hides in silence. But silence is not neutrality, it's permission." The room fell silent except for the soft clicking of reporters' keyboards. Ava continued. "When I was told to move out of my seat, I wasn't angry. I was disappointed, because it wasn't just about me. It was about every young person told they don't belong in spaces they've worked hard to reach." Senator Carter leaned forward. "Dr. Brooks, what do you hope this committee will achieve?" Ava smiled faintly. "To make sure the next person doesn't have to call an uncle or a chairman to be treated like a human being." That sentence became the quote of the year. Over the next few months, the Airline Dignity Act passed with overwhelming bipartisan support. It required every commercial airline to implement mandatory bias training, a passenger dignity reporting system, and independent audits on discrimination claims. But Ava's work didn't stop there. She used the momentum to build a foundation named after her late mentor, the Patel Institute for Ethical Travel, dedicated to studying social behavior in transportation environments. And slowly, the numbers began to tell a story that words alone never could. In the first 6 months, verified discrimination incidents dropped by 40% across participating airlines. Customer satisfaction ratings climbed by 30. Employee retention improved. And behind every statistic were real people. Passengers who no longer feared humiliation at 30,000 feet. Ava traveled constantly now, speaking at universities, hospitals, and conferences. But she still carried the same leather folio she'd opened on Flight 329. The same ID badge. The same bracelet that had once sparked disbelief but now symbolized change. Everywhere she went, someone would stop her and say, "You're Dr. Ava Brooks, right? The one from the plane?" And she would smile politely and reply, "No. I'm the one who stayed calm so the world would finally listen." But as her story grew, so did her responsibility, because once you become a symbol, you stop living for comfort and start living for impact. That was fine with her. She had never been searching for comfort anyway. The movement was gaining altitude and she was only getting started. Ava's days became a blur of airports, interviews, and late-night strategy meetings. Sleep came in brief pockets between flights, but purpose kept her wide awake. Every time she stepped onto a plane, she felt the weight of what had begun on that North Star flight. But she also felt the quiet triumph of knowing that thousands of people could now fly with a little more dignity because of it. It had been almost a year since the incident when she walked back into North Star headquarters. The building that once held her uncle's office now carried a new sign in the lobby, the Brooks Center for Ethical Leadership. The sight made her pause. It wasn't vanity, it was the realization that a single moment of injustice could ripple into permanent reform. Inside, a new generation of flight attendants and supervisors sat in a training session. On the screen, Carol Price stood before a class, her voice steady, her face open. "My name is Carol," she began, "and I once let bias make a decision for me. That mistake taught me everything I know about accountability." Ava watched from the doorway. Carol caught her eye mid-sentence, smiled, and continued. "We're not just here to learn how to avoid mistakes. We're here to understand why they happen. Bias isn't always loud. It can be quiet, polite, even invisible. That's why awareness matters." When the session ended, Carol walked straight to Ava. "You changed my life," she said. Ava shook her head. "No, you chose to change it yourself. I just gave you the chance." Outside the conference room, reporters waited to capture the moment. The story of Flight 329 had become legend now, a textbook example of transformation. It was taught in business ethics courses, diversity seminars, even law schools. People called Ava a prodigy, a reformer, a voice of reason. But she didn't see herself that way. She saw herself as a doctor, someone trained to fix what was broken, even if the patient was a system instead of a body. A week later, she was back at Summit Heart Institute. The familiar scent of antiseptic and coffee greeted her as she walked through the surgical wing. Nurses waved. Patients smiled. To them, she wasn't a celebrity, she was Dr. Brooks, the young surgeon who worked long shifts and always took extra time to comfort nervous families. She entered the operating room, scrubbed in, and focused. For a few hours, everything else fell away. The rhythm of surgery, the heartbeat on the monitor, the precision of instruments, the trust between hands reminded her why she started all of this in the first place. When the procedure was done, she removed her gloves and stepped into the hallway. Dr. Patel, her mentor, waited there with a proud smile. "I saw the news," he said. "You've done what most people only dream of, turning pain into policy." Ava smiled softly. "I just wanted people to be seen for who they are, not who others assume them to be." "And yet you managed to change an entire industry," he replied. "How does it feel to be the reason people travel without fear now?" She looked down the hallway where a nurse was helping a young intern, a black girl barely older than Ava had been when it all started, prepare for her first shift. "It feels like healing," Ava said quietly. "Not just for me, for all of us." That evening she received a call from her uncle, Thomas Reynolds. His voice carried warmth and gravity as always. "Ava, the board voted unanimously to expand your initiative to all our international partners. Europe, Asia, South America, everywhere North Star flies." She hesitated for a second. "That's good news, but it's also a lot of responsibility." He chuckled. "Responsibility has never scared you. Besides, this isn't just a company policy anymore. It's a movement. Governments are asking for guidance. Airlines are copying our model. You've changed how the world sees equality at 35,000 feet. Ava smiled faintly. Then we'll need a bigger team. I already have names, Thomas said. And I want you to head the council yourself. You've earned that, Ava. She thanked him and hung up, staring out at the city lights beyond her window. The skyline shimmered like a heartbeat, alive, restless, constant. She thought about that first moment on Flight 329, when fear and prejudice had tried to make her smaller. Instead, it had made her unstoppable. Days later, she stood on stage at the International Aviation Conference in Geneva. The room was filled with CEOs, government officials, and journalists. Cameras flashed, but Ava's focus was steady. She spoke with quiet conviction. Dignity is not a luxury, she said. It's a human right. We built planes that can cross oceans but forgot to build systems that treat passengers equally. It's time we change that. The audience erupted in applause, but Ava didn't smile for the cameras. Her eyes caught on the faces in the front row. Pilots, flight attendants, young professionals of every background. People who believed. When the event ended, an elderly flight attendant approached her. "Dr. Brooks," she said, voice trembling, "I watched your story unfold from the very start. It made me reflect on things I thought I'd buried. You made me want to do better." Ava clasped her hand gently. That's all I ever wanted, for people to want to do better. Outside, as she left the hall, snow began to fall lightly on the streets of Geneva. For the first time in months, Ava paused to breathe deeply. She looked up at the sky, watching the flakes drift down like silent confessions. Change was never easy. It demanded discomfort. It demanded reflection, but it also demanded people brave enough to stay calm when the world doubted them. She thought of the words she had spoken to Carol months ago. Growth isn't punishment. It's proof we can change. As she walked through the snow, her phone buzzed with another message, this time from Lena. The documentary is done. It's premiering tomorrow. I named it Seat 1C, the story that changed the skies. Ava smiled and typed back, then let's hope it helps someone else find their voice. The storm thickened outside, but Ava felt something stronger than cold, purpose, still burning, still alive. She had turned a moment of humiliation into a legacy of hope. And somewhere in the world, on another plane, a young traveler sat down in first class, heart steady, unafraid, because of her. The night of the documentary premiere arrived, and cities all over the world were already buzzing about it, social media feeds filled with anticipation. News anchors teased the story as the moment that changed air travel forever. But Ava didn't watch it from a red carpet or a crowded theater. She sat quietly at her desk, surrounded by letters. Hundreds of them, handwritten, folded neatly, sent from strangers across the globe. One was from a teacher in Detroit who said her students now used Ava's story in classroom debates about ethics. Another from a mother in Nairobi who said her teenage daughter had finally applied to medical school after watching the video clip of Ava standing tall on Flight 329. There was even a note from a retired pilot in Tokyo. I used to think bias was someone else's problem. Now I know it was mine too. Thank you for helping me see it before it was too late. Ava placed the letters carefully back in their box. These were the real results, the unseen changes in hearts, not just policies. When the documentary finally began airing that evening, the response was overwhelming. Millions tuned in. The opening line from the narrator echoed through homes and airports alike. It started with a seat, a misunderstanding, and a girl who refused to lower her voice or her dignity. Within hours, Seat 1C trended across continents. People posted stories of their own, moments they had been judged, moments they had spoken up, moments they wished they had. Airlines began publicly pledging to adopt the Dignity Protocol. Legislators cited Ava's work in discussions about workplace equality. And amid all the noise, one constant thread appeared across every platform. One voice can change the system. Ava didn't sleep that night. The next morning, her flight to Washington awaited. This time, not for a hearing, but for something far larger. As she boarded, the flight crew recognized her immediately. "Dr. Brooks," said the captain, shaking her hand. "We've all been trained under your program. It's changed everything." Ava smiled warmly. "Then let's keep it that way." The flight was calm, but her mind was already preparing. When the plane landed, she was escorted straight to the White House. The hallways smelled faintly of cedar polish and coffee, and the air carried that weight of history that only certain rooms hold. Inside the East Room, the president stood behind a podium, a small velvet box resting on it. Cameras flashed, but Ava focused on the faces, the people from every corner of government, industry, and community who had come to witness what her journey had sparked. The president smiled at her. "Dr. Ava Brooks," he began, "in a single moment you showed the world that dignity is not optional. You turned confrontation into education and humiliation into reform. Because of you, millions now travel with respect and safety. On behalf of this nation, it is my honor to present you with the Presidential Medal for Social Impact." Applause erupted. Ava stepped forward, the weight of the medal cool against her skin. For a second, she thought of Flight 329, the hum of the engines, the sting of Carol's words, the cold suspicion in the eyes of strangers. Then she thought of how every cruel glance had turned into something luminous. When she spoke, her voice carried softly but clearly across the hall. "Thank you. But this medal isn't mine alone. It belongs to everyone who has ever been told they don't belong, and chose to stand anyway. It belongs to those who record injustice, to those who learn from their mistakes, and to those who decide that silence will never again be an option." Her words silenced the room. Some in the crowd were crying quietly. Others simply nodded. Later that evening, she returned home to find Carol waiting at her door, holding a single white envelope. "I wanted to give you this," Carol said. Inside was a photo, 2 women standing together in the North Star Training Center. Carol and a young black trainee, both smiling under a banner that read, "Dignity Takes Flight." "I lead the entire bias program now," Carol said proudly. "We've trained over 6,000 employees. I tell your story every single time." Ava hugged her. "Then it's your story too now." They stood there for a long moment, the city alive around them, the world still shifting quietly towards something better. Months passed. The Dignity Initiative expanded into railways, hospitals, and schools. The app Ava had designed reached 1 million downloads. International airports displayed her quote on digital billboards near every gate. "Respect is the highest altitude a person can reach." But one evening, alone in her office, Ava wrote something in her journal, a thought she'd been carrying since that first flight. You can't heal a heart by shaming it. You heal it by showing it how to beat again. She closed the journal, switched off the light, and looked out over the city skyline. Planes blinked in the dark distance, tiny stars moving across the black, each one carrying stories, faces, and small acts of courage she might never know about. But she smiled anyway, because somewhere right now, someone was being treated with dignity for the first time in their life, and that was all the reward she'd ever wanted.